if I really have the marketing organization, I would split it in two and I would have two CMOs, not one. I haven't met anyone that can be highly creative and highly technical and very deep into everything that needs to be done. And I think it's an unfair ask. And a lot of times CMOs are caught on this. Like, they need to be creative, but they also need to be business centered, and they also have to be technical. And I think that's going to be harder. And I think these new technologies make the case to polarize that world even more and not expect that from the same person.
Welcome to Experimental, the podcast that cuts through the noise to bring you actionable insights in B2C growth, marketing, and data science. I'm your host, Sundar, former head of brand data science at Uber and the mind behind the Experimental newsletter. Join me as I talk with industry leaders who have driven growth at companies like Uber, Spotify, and Netflix. We'll uncover the experiments, failures, and breakthroughs that lead to real results. Now, let's get experimental.
Today, my guest is Nuno Leal. He's the EY Studio CMO practice leader of all of Americas, and he has one of the best views of what many companies are doing using AI in marketing. Nuno, welcome to Experimental.
So, Nara, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan, so thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, it's great to have you. And I think I just want to get into, you have such a broad lens of what companies are doing and what they're thinking through at the highest levels, right? This is where CMOs come to engage EY and get your expertise. Let's start off with, what are you just seeing in the landscape? Maybe some of the challenges that you're seeing right now.
Believe it or not, the challenges resemble the same things in the last, 5 to 7 years. I think most companies that we try to support are in this mid transition into becoming, a fully integrated, experimental led marketing organization. And somehow they all know the destination that they need to get to, but they're all struggling with something. That something is a combination of things. They either have all the tooling and they try to set up the data to actually run it the way they want, but they're kind of not fully exploring what they built. And so a lot of times, a combination of technologies, a combination of data coming from different systems are not really working well together. And they don't have the full promise of, can we experiment everything? Can we go as fast as we want? So that's one. The second one is, they feel like their teams and their skills and their training did not evolve over time. Marketing, a lot of the foundations are the same, but things change very fast, especially now with AI, and we can spend time on that one. And so they're trying to find the right balance on how to upskill the team, how to have new skills coming into the team and be effective. And then, I follow a lot of the things you cover here in your podcast. A lot of the pressure on the CMO and the marketing team as a high cost investment center and proving ROI. It's always a thing that we hear every year, and every year is a bit different, but depending on how we are in the economy. But we a lot of times have to come and support the teams, how to communicate that value.
Yes, and I'd love to dig into the AI portion, but taking a step back, tell me a little bit more about the landscape of the companies that you're working with. Are they small, large, industry? Like, is there anything that you can sort of touch on there?
Yeah, typically they're large. That's where we probably focus on the top 1,000 companies in the world. I would say that I would put a couple of different groups in perspective. I think B2C and B2B is still very different in terms of maturity. I think B2C companies tend to be a bit more involved, tend to invest a bit more, especially on the pure marketing side with advertising. Whereas B2B, we're still trying to coalesce the motion of marketing and sales. So that's very different. I think consumer tech and tech native companies are probably much ahead because they're just natively an engineering company. And so to actually go and do the promise of full incrementality, experimentation at scale, I think that cohort is very much there. But all the other companies, somehow, even the companies that were not direct to consumer, they are becoming direct to consumer. So all the retailers are direct to consumer. All the media companies that used to be a B2B business, they're now at the streaming platform. So in fact, where I feel is that even the companies that were not B2C are migrating there, And the companies that are not native tech, they don't have another way if not migrating there. So everyone is converging into the way consumer tech companies do marketing, but everyone is at different stage of maturity. And depending on who we work with, the problems are different.
There's so much to unpack there. And so I want to start with, again, you have such an amazingly broad landscape where you get to say, oh, this pattern, this pattern, this pattern. Tell me maybe like just one of the first pitfalls that you're seeing companies do with trying to adopt Gen AI.
I'll tell you the first one. Trying to do too many things at the same time. I haven't seen any marketing organization, like forget AI for a second, trying to focus on 10, 20 things at the same time and do them well. Because marketing is about execution. Like a lot of times, we use intuition, we use analysis, but he's really testing things and he's really doing things well and persisting on doing things well. So on Gen AI, the pressure comes from the top. This is the classic situation of a marketing organization. CEO reads the news, pressing the CMO, the CTO has its own ideas. We have to use AI. We have to use AI. What tends to happen is the marketing organization, bottoms up, starts experimenting a lot. There's like 20 things ongoing. The 20 things are going are typically on each silo. Product marketing is doing something, performance marketing is testing something on ads. The content team is testing something on production. But in fact, none of those experiments are integrated enough to really create value. And none of these experiments are focused and resourced enough to create production accuracy, to actually have something that marketers can use. So I would say the first pitfall, if you're working in a marketing organization, if you're a CMO, and if you see your organization doing 20 things, I'm pretty sure you're in a bad situation. So
And
that's focus.
yeah, and that's a great starting point, but you kind of had mentioned like these companies were already, I mean, I think it depends on the adoption curve. We're already sort of picking up more experimentation, testing, this data-driven cycle. So are they already jumping into Gen AI before they even got those foundations in your experience?
A lot of times, yes. And I think that's part of the problem, Sundar. Um, when you actually look at the most mature organizations, a lot of the foundations to use data, but algorithms, which, in fact, this is just a neural network class of models, but um, there is a perception that sometimes we can jump and leapfrog steps. And in my experience, there is not. You still need a data foundation. You still need all the foundations of very mature marketing organizations that run experimentation to actually deploy this. Because in the end, it's about being able to deploy highly accurate data, highly relevant data, and do it in a way that you can measure things. Um, and yes, I do think there's a class of companies that think that can leapfrog that, but in my experience, that is going to be very hard. What I think CMOs should be doing is, because there's so much attention on Gen AI, there is a lot of appetite, and there's a lot of I would say CFOs and CEOs would welcome requests for investments now more than ever, because they're out there seeing what these models can do. And so what I've seen, probably the most effective organizations and CMOs that were savvy about this is actually using this as a catalyst to ask for investment, to set up the right foundations, and then focus on one or two areas that we really need to build something, instead of 20 pilots on things that probably are not the highest value and the highest impact.
This is brilliant. So they're essentially, what you're saying is like, hey, they know they have to get to Gen AI and leverage it, but they also know that they don't have the data quality or the infrastructure. And so they're using this as sort of like a stepping stone to be able to get that. Is that
Yes.
kind of what you're seeing, a bit of a pattern?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Okay. Very,
and you have to find the right way, because you also have to show that you're making progress. So, there's two extremes. There's an extreme that, you're building a spaceship and no one has patience for that. And then you have the extreme that you're being contacted by a vendor and you're doing something isolated that is not going to scale. It's finding the right balance. And I know this sounds like a unicorn, but I do feel like Gen AI gives you the permission to ask for enough investment. And I think if you're focused, you can show something in a couple of months that is transformative.
Yeah, and I would like to, make sure we get back to what you're seeing as the best places to potentially start using Gen AI. But before that, walk me through, because again, a lot of my audience won't have the luxury of having someone as talented as you and the resources you have to come in and sort of help them. How do you, when you go into a client, how are you thinking about what is your first step? What do you even ask for? What are you looking at?
Um, you know, first we so the way we're organized in Studio Plus is we don't have just a discipline looking at things. So my team is comprised with creatives, business strategists, performance marketers, data and AI engineers. So we look at a problem holistically. So the worst thing we can do is we just come and we think marketing is one little thing, and it's not. It's a combination of functions. So we come in ready to analyze the ecosystem holistically. The first thing I really try to do is first understand the problem that got us there. A lot of times the problem is not fully um, structured and really thought of. Sometimes, the problem is where our cost of acquisition is just through the roof. And is it really the cost of acquisition, or like, is it really the money you're putting in, or is it really the effectiveness and the product market fit that you have on specific categories? So we try to break it apart, the problem that exists, and then we reframe what we think is the right approach to the problem. Very rarely we have an ask that is just, let's just lower cost of acquisition to get that example, and we just go and do it. We A lot of times we spend time on what's really the problem. Um, and once we have that, um, I think one thing that we're changing about our approach is not spending too much time on analysis, and there's a thing about advising companies that in the past it was very analysis driven, and I feel that in this new world, and especially marketing, I think marketing is annoying and brilliant at the same time, because I feel like analysis and intuition just takes you so far. If you're really done marketing, you will know, people will know what I'm saying. You gotta experiment things. You just gotta test a lot of things very fast. So our approach is multidisciplinary to the problem, analyze, structure, really dissect the problem, and then going very straight to putting the companies in a position to test a different approach. In the example of cost of acquisition, I would not have spent 12 weeks tested, like analyzing historical data and cutting everything. I would just go fast to what I think is a problem. If I think is effectiveness of certain set of campaigns or certain products, we would recommend the company to do something fast, and we would help them test while we're there. And I think that's a new approach for advising companies. And I think that's also more effective for companies to make change.
That's amazing, and I think, this classic knock on consulting was exactly like you said, right? You do 12-week engagements and you just get a deck at the end. But I love this new approach that you're taking. How have clients received this? Because something you had mentioned is right, they're not really used to the sort of experimentation, the speed of innovation. How have you been able to position what you're doing as saying like, hey, this is what we believe is the best path forward?
Um, I think everyone agrees with the concept that we have to be data driven and
Mm.
experiment, but I think you have to have seen it to understand the power of it. When I work with consumer tech companies, it's just natively, I mean, you will know better than anyone. Like, it is not like people have done it, so they understand it's a way of doing things. On companies that don't have that muscle, they will agree that data is everything and we have to be data driven, but it's the actual execution of it that is extremely complicated. Um, so what we found is that instead of doing those 12-week tech presentations, that in my opinion, I'm speaking against my industry, um, I don't think it help a lot most of the organizations. What we're doing is holding hands with the teams and actually showing them a sliver of what they can do at scale. And I find that way more effective than just telling or theory and so on. They have to actually do it with us, and then once we start doing it, then you start getting to the rhythm, and then you start taking steps towards being a full experimentation focused marketing organization.
And have you found that you have to stay, quite along at these engagements to be able to keep that muscle building, or are companies picking it up quite quickly and they're like, "Oh, okay, we're good now."
It takes a while. It takes a while. So it would be a, you know, and even for people to trust, even for teams to trust the results and iterate on the results, it's really a muscle that you need to create. Uh, but I think it's the best help that we can give companies. And in my opinion, I'll tell you, most of the marketing organizations are spending a lot of time in analysis paralysis. Like if I gave you, if I gave you the last 20 engagements that I had with marketing organizations, I would tell you, I would swap half of the time the team spent talking about results and talking about what to do versus actually doing it. So it might sound a cliche, but like a lot of marketing teams, the first thing I would do is just let's just stop talking about what happened. Let's just stop talking about all the plans we have for the future. Let's just lay out the 4 or 5 hypotheses we have that can fundamentally improve demand for our product, engagement with our product early. Let's test them and see what happens, and let's go to the next one. And a lot of companies are either discussing what happened in the future or thinking about the 5 steps ahead, which, by the way, no one knows 5 steps ahead. No one knows what's going to happen. That would be my main reaction to any marketing team, like, which is, I'm not even defending my own services. It's just do it on your own. Just focus on the 5 things and go and test it.
Yeah, so you're pointing to both extremes, right? Both the analysis process where you do nothing, and then the flip side where you do too many things, and it's like you said, it's this balance that you kind of have to find. One thing I want to circle back to is, what are you finding is like a really, on average, a really good starting place to say, you know what, this is probably going to have a decent ROI. Let's go do this first. Like, do you have a go-to sort of piece of the puzzle that you work on?
For AI specifically, or anything
Yeah, for AI. Yeah.
for AI. Well, look, for me, these models. So if I talk about Gen AI specifically, the models are extremely good at text. More than anything, they're actually production graded at in text communication. And I think there's an external, an outside in, and an inside out approach to this. The first thing is a lot of the communication uh, that can have a layer of personalization and customization tied to simple data has a lot of promise already, and I think is production ready. So I'll give you examples. Um, Personalization of emails, it works very well. I've deployed it in a couple of times on being very specific to the client, especially when you know usage on media, or when you know purchasing history on retail and commerce. It works very, very well. And I think a lot of times companies already have the infrastructure to deploy this, and it works very well. The distilling pieces of content into multimodal pieces of text. I'll give you examples. Companies have large videos and large webinars, events. Programming teams have large videos. Using models to actually create a long tail of content from that is targeted to different users works very well. Again, especially if it's from image, video into text. um, you know, Creating long form articles, short articles, organic social posts. It's a very, very good way to start increasing share of mind in different platforms. And it's almost for free, and it's very easy to productionalize, and you can scale it with the technologies that I see. So I would say those two pieces, I saw them working very well in content production.
Can you share a case study on maybe personalization or something that you've done on that lines that you've seen just very quick results?
Yeah, let me let me give you an example of a sports publisher that I worked with. And basically, they have these large interviews and these large videos that are part of their product. And, parts of the interviews are highly relevant for specific people. I'll give you an example. There was an NBA interview, and they were talking about, a specific team and a specific player. And, in the past, that marketing team that they had to promote the platform, they did not have those assets to actually go and promote the fans of that player or that team. That it was buried in a mem, and it's a 1 hour and a half long video. I mean, the marketing team could never access that type of content. Like, there was nothing being done. So what we help them do is actually take a set of B-roll of all that content that they had in the past. Just think that any company has a lot of content that is relevant. And we start dissecting it and actually vectorizing it dimensions for teams, players, coaches, so anything we think that culturally people can like and prospects can like, we tag them, and we started creating an infrastructure where the models will parse the videos into short videos, into articles about those specific keywords that we created, and they would publish that in specific parts of the website, like more granular parts of the website. So we would have, from that video, we would have a transcript of that player and that team. We would have a short video of that player of that team, and that serialized, like, that would take a couple of minutes to do out of a 1 hour and a half video, and it worked very well. So we started putting those things online, and guess what? SEO starts picking up on it. Organic pages start mentioning it. The clip is being pulled to social, and out of one asset that was not doing anything, we started amplifying, getting thousands of impressions out of the same product. And that worked very well. If you looked at their traffic on specific categories where we tested this, it jumped, like, I think about 70-80%, which is quite amazing, with no investment.
And would a good way to summarize this be, Gen AI and its current capabilities is really good at amplifying and sort of executing strategy, but at the end of the day, you still have to have a clear vision of that?
100%. And I think, I was telling you this before. I think the future is really two CMOs. Like, it's too bright. I think marketing teams need to be polarized more. You will need, and it's brand and creativity, and raw creativity will be very, very important, because Gen AI will kind of commoditize a bit the performance side of marketing. Like, if you take a few steps forward, that you're going to have agents looking at ads, like, you're going to be serving ads to agents, not to us. A lot of the research, a lot of the transactions are going to be automated. So a lot of that part, mid to low funnel, that I'm trying to convince you, Sundar, to buy a product, I think is going to become an agent to agent transaction. Is going to be a bit more commoditized. I don't see a lot of people comparing prices anymore. I don't see a lot of people looking at promotions anymore or comparing features anymore. I see people spending more time up front on the connection that they have with the brand, on the emotional connection they have with the product. So I think we're going to need way more investment on the brand and creative side. And we're going to need a team that is almost not thinking about the automation of everything. Like, they're just purely thinking, how do I connect with human beings that will be the last part of that terminal of decision? And how do I reinforce that? And then you're going to need probably 2, 3, 4x of the automation and the infrastructure that you have today. You're going to need, infrastructure to connect your CMS, for example, with agentic workflows. You're going to need Gen AI models on top of what you do. So you're even going to need more technical expertise in marketing teams to actually do it very well. So in fact, if I really have the marketing organization, I would split it in two, and I would have two CMOs, not one. I haven't met anyone that can be highly creative and highly technical, and and very deep into everything that needs to be done. And I think it's an unfair ask. And a lot of times CMOs are caught on this. Like, they need to be creative, but they also need to be business centered, and they also have to be technical. And I think that's going to be harder. And I think these new technologies make the case to polarize that world even more and not expect that from the same person.
This is so interesting you brought this up, because that's actually the structure at Uber. I don't think a lot of people know that.
I
There's a
didn't know that.
VP of performance marketing and a VP of brand marketing. Of course, there's like quite a lot of overlap in creative
Of
and
course.
things, but like from like a left brain, right brain, that's kind of how Uber thinks about it. At least they were when I was there. But I'd love to go a little bit more on like what does that team look like? Let's just even think about like percentage of people in creative versus maybe the more automation side. Like how have you thought about what this could look like?
Um, I think so. First of all, in terms of size, I think the teams will shrink. This is not marketing specific, but I think a lot of times we do a disservice, especially on large companies. We have too many people, and the problem is not people are not good or people are not doing the right job or not trying. It's just like when you add a lot of people into something, you create a lot of complexity too. You create a lot of layers into communication, um, asymmetry of information and so on. And I think these new set of technologies, especially on production of materials, especially on integration, it's going to allow teams to shrink and each individual probably cover a bit more functions. So it's going to become, let's say that you would have, a product marketer, a campaign activation, a performance marketer, an SEO person, and you had 7 people for 7 sub-functions. You're probably going to have 3, 4 people, and they're going to aggregate more of the functions. So I feel like people will become a bit more uh, cross-functional and able to do more jobs than before. And so I think we're going to see a shrinkage of discrete functions in organizations. On the creative side, I think you're still going to need the luxury of time and the luxury of creativity. And I would say that marketing teams would be very well equipped if they even looked outside of marketing. I think there's a lot of art majors, there's a lot of psychology majors that it's still very unexplored what you can really do with creativity in marketing. And I think if I see it correctly, the top companies will start bringing more of that talent. And it's going to be not a large team, but it's going to be a team that is almost insulated and really thinking about, are we connecting with our consumers? Are we really permeating the emotional connection that we want? Is it really what the brand is? And that requires dedicated capacity, and that requires a space for the right people to be doing that. On the performance side, on the more technical instrumentation side, um, I see not just the functions collapsing, but I also see more technical people coming in. Like I was telling this to a CMO a week ago. The CMO wanted to hire new people and upskill the team and so on. And I told him, listen, why don't you actually go and hire a couple of software engineers? Like the market is very constrained for software engineers, for junior software engineers, right? Like yeah, they're being challenged by Codex, Replit, all of that. Like, why don't you actually get them? I know they have no marketing background, but they have the tooling to get in your team and try to solve marketing problems with their skills. And I mean, he was a little hesitant when I told him. I'm not sure if he still thinks it's a good idea, but what I want to say is, I think that part of marketing is going to become more technical, and you're going to need builders there. You cannot rely on your data engineering and IT to do everything. And so those teams, in my opinion, will collapse in terms of functions and will be more technical. And we're going to see more technical people coming to the best marketing organizations.
The structure that you were talking about around art majors and psychology majors, it felt like the older brands, if you will, were doing that, right? They had a really good grasp of psychology and marketing, and then maybe consumer tech sort of veered away from that. Is that fair in your assessment, or it's like no, they were actually doing it differently, and am I missing something?
It's very fair, but you know, I think it's an end problem. So I think the consumer tech created natively a very good way to actually measure marketing and run marketing that is relevant for people. And doing good brand does not replace that. You still need to do that. Um, and because that was so effective, like when AdWords started and search and all that, because that was so effective, everyone kind of shifted aggressively into that area. And, for many years, you will know this very well. The pressure was to bring all the brand spending to performance, even when you could measure brand and you could bring that, you know, it's very easy for an executive to be performance. It's way easier to measure, it's way more fungible. And, you know, I think that's still relevant. It will be relevant. It will be different, right? You have to now integrate with ChatGPT instead of Google, probably. And, things will change on the performance side. Will there be CPM the way it exists today? Maybe not. But um, that's still going to be very important. My point is the creative side will be the clear differentiator if everyone does things well. And both if we lose, so if the consumers have to do less in the purchase power, so if, for example, you have a model doing research for you and you have a model actually going through the steps, your time will be more focused on evaluating the brand of the actual company and how you connect and how you like it. So you're going to become less a person that is going to be doing all the triggers, and you're going to be more evaluating and making decisions. And I think brand is very important for that. So I think going back to basics and actually focusing on that is going to be critical. The other thing I wanted to tell you is I think a lot of people don't have the background that the models, like the actual LLMs and the responses, they're optimized by human answers. So there's like a lot of the optimization is actually Q&Aing humans. Like you're basically spitting out output, and there's a bunch of experts in different fields that are actually tailoring and fine tuning the models. So they're actually optimizing in a certain way for what we like. Just we don't know exactly how that framework is. A lot of the creators of the models don't know either. But like, I feel like if you create something that humans like upfront, it just permeates also in the way models pick answers and responses. So that's one more argument of why I think creative and brand is going to be even more important in the future.
I think this is the most nuanced conversation I've had in a while about the effect of brand. I think so much of the commentary around it is like, well, brands have been doing this for years. It's just how big, brands, stay top of mind. This is actually the most like interesting perspective on like actually brand. Yes, it serves the same purpose, but it looks very different for different reasons in this new Gen AI world. Like I think this idea of agents purchasing for you and therefore you spend more time evaluating brands. And then also kind of like you said, because it trains, because of how it's trained, that's a really, really cool perspective that, yeah, I haven't heard anyone really talk about it. I would, it'd be cool to see more of that flavor of thought. That's a really good lens.
I appreciate it.
And then when you're, talking to these CMOs, do you feel like they're getting it, or are they still very in this mind of, hey, I've got the short term ROI pressure, brand versus performance? Like, where does this sort of future world building that you're talking about and have done a great job explaining, like how receptive are they, and how good have they been at adopting that mentality?
Um, I think overall people understand things are changing. I think there's a kind of a couple of groups of CMOs. I mean, there's the ones that fully get it, and they just want to find the right way to crack the organization into investing into infrastructure. So I think the top good thinkers are already thinking we need to build the foundations to run this at scale. We need to show value. Yes, there's always a short term component, but we're going to do that. Um, and I think those and that group is quite significant. Is they're just trying to find the right balance between where do I start and how do I show value in my, I don't know what's the tenure these days for CMOs, like 2-year average tenure of career. And that is not an easy balancing act, because in order to deploy AI, you really need a lot of the organization. A lot of it is experimental, right? Like there's a lot of these things are not productized. So how do they find the right balance to build the foundations and deliver value fast? I think that's what is in everyone's mind, the ones that get it. There's another group of them that I would say that they're active. but I'm not sure if they understood already how fundamental is this change. Like that example of GPT on traffic. I mean, like a year ago, we were talking with some of them, and they're like, yeah, ChatGPT. It's kind of like, that's what my son uses in university, type of thing. And we were starting to talk to them about, well, listen, um, a lot of your traffic is SEO or SEM, like that's going to change as soon as someone puts on default GPT as one of the, like, as soon as the iPhone does that or someone does that, it's going to change. So what are you doing about it? Are you integrating with them? Like, and so I think no one really felt a sense of urgency, but now companies are seeing 30-40% traffic reduction. Like, this is real data from the last few months across almost categories, because people are just not Googling them. They're in GPT. And what are they doing about it? Well, now they're chasing it. Now they're all thinking, oh, we need YouTube content and Reddit content because that's where these models inference. Okay, we knew that a year ago. We need to golden fact book for our website, questions and answers, because that's how these models pull. Okay, we knew that 1 year ago. We also know that in a year, probably your content management system has to connect with GPT and Claude and Gemini. Are we doing anything about it? No, we're still on the YouTube and Reddit. So my main point is there is a group that is just being reactive, and that's a very bad situation to be in my opinion. You want to be, yes, practical and doing short term, but you have to think in 1-2 years what that means for your marketing. And if you're not doing that, I think you're always going to be chasing the next problem and the next problem. That's not a good situation to be in.
There's, again, so much to unpack, and I actually want to keep going to hear your thoughts on what this future kind of looks like. I think you brought up some really great points already, but like, yeah, what does the rest of this year, what does 2026 look like for you? Like, what are you preparing your teams for, and the CMOs that you're working with? What are you telling them to do?
So we have to picture what we think is going to be marketing in 4 or 5 years. That's an exercise we did actually in my team. We call it the future of marketing. And basically we got together, and this is not just brand people or performance people. This is a combination of people. And we try to, at a minimum, have a view and a couple of scenarios of where we think marketing will be in 5 years. So how do we think agentic commerce will work? How do we think advertising networks will evolve in terms of promoting products, linking to catalogs, all of that? How do we think the creative process of production will change? So we did an exercise where we actually looked at the main parts of marketing, and we tried to extrapolate what we think are things that are likely to happen. And based on that, we internally are organizing ourselves towards that. So we know, for example, that I'll continue on the example that we were in. We know that the web will change. So, we have people that work on content management systems, on digital asset managers. We have people that work on commerce. We know that we have people that work on ad tech. We know that this entire infrastructure will change. Even the monetization models will change. So at a minimum, we have to work together. So at a minimum, we have to stay very close, observe this very closely, and start working. This is from our side, from consulting. And we're using this as a guide for us to aggregate it in the right groups to make sure that we're seeing the problem and we're solving the problem. In companies, what I would say the average CMO should do is, let's look at their own business model and their own positioning, and really understand what these technologies can do for them. I'll give you an example. We work with a lot of B2B companies that could learn a lot from B2C marketing companies, by the way. But anyways, that's a different topic. The B2B companies, most companies, they still market to segments. And, you still hear them say, oh, we're going to run this ad for a medium-sized companies in consumer goods. But I mean, these technologies fundamentally shift their capabilities into going to talk to each buyer and influencer of a purchase, which, I mean, a company doesn't buy anything, a buyer buys something, right? So if you're in a large company, Ernst & Young is not buying something. It's Nuno that is buying or influencing something. And for me, these technologies will fundamentally change the way they can market and organize themselves even. Like, if today you use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, if you have a couple of tools like, Sixth Sense, all that stuff, like you can actually create a buyer graph and all your campaigns can actually be a B2C campaign, not a B2B campaign. If I was in a B2B marketing organization, I would be like, this is inevitable. This is going to happen. So how do I build the capabilities? How do I organize my company, my marketing organization into targeting the buyer? That's just like a sliver of example. Like I would project what we think would be the 2, 3, 4 areas that will be fundamentally different. And I would start betting and organizing my team towards that.
Could I get another sliver? Because this is so cool. Anything else you can share?
Let me think. Another example, another case study type of thing. Um, let me think. I talked about creative. I talked about
Well, we can do another the future thought that you had, because I think what you just said was great. So if there's
okay,
another like future
future of marketing type of thing.
future of marketing type thing, yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah. So let me do agentic commerce. Let me talk a little bit about agentic commerce. Um, let me think about something I didn't really touch. We talked about search a lot. We talked about creative a lot. Oh, one cool thing that I didn't talk about is personalizing the content to the actual content. I think that would be cool. Okay, I can talk
Yeah.
about this too.
Yeah, cool.
All right, you asked me something.
Yeah. So, look, can I get another sliver of, where Nuno thinks the future of marketing is going?
Yes. Look, another thing is on personalization. So again, consumer tech, extremely good at personalizing. Um, the assets, the construct of personalization really well done is one asset or a set of finite assets into the individual. So if Sundar likes ice creams on Saturday, you will get that message with ice creams on the right time on Saturday. But the actual artifact that you get is a finite number. Like we don't have infinite capabilities to build actually one-to-one piece of content. Um, what I've seen already some experiments in is actually having true one-to-one, which is you actually tailor the entire creative. So a combination of text, image, and maybe video. Video is a bit harder still. Into personalized to that specific person. So even the background of like, so let me take the ice cream and Saturday example. I would serve you naturally from a catalog that I have of an ad that is for people that like ice cream and, in the weekend with their family. But now I can actually do the standard version of that real time. I can actually put a picture of fall. If you like the fall, I could put a picture of Amsterdam because I know you're in Amsterdam. And the power of contextualizing the actual content that you have, I have seen slivers of that, and it's quite powerful. And there's a lot of criticism because some of the image models still struggle to do a lot of things. So, for example, when you do background, it works very well. When you do product with text, it works very well. But when you do actual photography, it still struggles, right? So sure, we're not there yet. But just think that with the pace of evolution that we had, like I remember trying ChatGPT, I don't know how many years ago, but now GPT Pro, when I look at the difference, it's insane. When I look at Sora now versus the first Mid Journey, things that I tested, it's insane. So just think in 2-3 years. In 2-3 years, you're gonna have an app that is exactly tailored to you and it's absolutely personalized to you. And the ability to orchestrate this depends a lot on customer data. And so we've seen marketing organizations investing so much in customer data because of first party data, the cookieless world, all of that. Like it's going to be even more important to personalize things. And if you're not doing that, someone is. And so you're losing relevancy. And so the personalization of the actual content, not the message to the person, for me is an impressive thing. And I think it's just going to be used in very creative ways by organizations.
That's such an eye-opening view of the future. I've got one more question, and this is more of like a personal thing that I've just been waffling on. So I recently published an article that said I don't think companies should use paid ads for a very long time. With
I
the
read
idea
it.
being that, yeah. So just for context for everyone listening, like I really do believe that there is a world now where founder-led marketing, well, not just founder, but your entire team, you can just create so much content across TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. And that's where the buyers are starting their journey. And so that's where you should go. I'd love to hear your thoughts because you have so much experience around all this. Like, is that what you even see from the future of like channel mix? Like, do you see anything different going on there?
I I read it and I fully agreed with your point of view. That touches a trend that, companies should think organic first, organic content first before any paid. Even organic is a channel for you to test artifacts and then graduate to paid. Like there's a couple of clients that I've seen that have this mental model, which is um we founder led, employee led, we first start organically by actually creating content for our categories. And then whatever works, maybe we should boost it and augment it versus, the traditional world that is like, let's do a brief and create all these spend in all the channels. And then, yeah, and then we have an organic thing that came from somewhere, but it's just a part of it. I think that is the future for many reasons. The first one is I think authenticity will matter. I was reading the other day that there was a study. I didn't fact check it, but I wasn't shocked that someone did a scour on new web articles like from news and entertainment type of thing, and almost 48% of them were AI generated, so they were not original. And we have the same thing on the big social media platforms. Like we're going to see a lot of content that is just not authentic. So I think there's going to be a premium for authenticity. And that point that I told you about LLMs optimizing for humans, they will pick up on it. So if it's authentic, if it's new, if it's fresh, I think that that type of content will be prioritized in the queue, not just for humans, but for machines. So absolutely. I think even if we don't go to the AI world, it's probably the best way to test if something works. Just drop, to your point, the founder employee, just drop something on social media. You will see if it's trending or not. If it is, I mean, that's the best test that you have on something, even in an ad. Um, and paid paid advertising was always a problem to measure. It still is. It's still a big investment. There's a world for it, but I do agree that that's another advantage of you relying less and less on it. And then we were talking about this. If there's an agent searching for things for you or purchasing for you, there's going to be a certain point that you're serving impressions for no one. And so I would focus more on the platforms that people are actually using, which in this case are social platforms.
Incredible. Like it was so awesome to go so broad across the future of marketing. I think we talked about everything from org structure to how people are going to buy to creative, like just so much. So, I just want to thank you for your time. This is so great. And I think it's very rare for me to have someone that's got such a wide lens of the field, and to hear your collective perspective has been really great.
Thanks for having me, Sundar. I'm a big fan, and I look forward to hear your next episodes too.
Yes, thank you, Nuno. And for anyone else listening, if you can afford it, hire them. Clearly know what they're doing. So this has been fantastic again. Thanks so much. And for everyone else listening, have a great day.
Thanks for tuning into Experimental. If today's insights sparked new ideas or made you feel like a smarter marketer, consider leaving a review on your preferred podcast platform. It really helps support the show. For more in-depth discussions and resources, visit experimental.beehive.com. Until next time, be curious and stay experimental.